right, it looks like we have a nice group of people in attendance, so we're going to dive right in. So if you can hear me, and if you're on this call, that means you're interested in the Scholar-in-Residence Program, which allows opportunities for you as U.S. institutions the ability to craft an application to bring a visiting scholar either of your choice or one that you can request recruitment to your campus to teach for a semester or full academic year. We're going to quickly go into an overview in a bit, but before we do so, I want to quickly introduce you to everyone on the call. First, my name is Sarah Causer. I'm an outreach and recruitment specialist. I've been working on this program for a good number of years, and I've very much enjoyed every moment of working with you all as institutions to really craft applications that suit your goals. I'm joined today by my colleague, Susan Mundell. Susan, would you like to say hello and introduce yourself?
Thanks, Sarah. Hello, everyone. I'm Susan Mundell. I'm the Assistant Director for Multi-Regional Fulbright Student and Scholar Programs at IIE. Happy to be here. Thanks for joining us.
Great. Originally, we were going to be joined by Catella DeBolt from Spokane Falls Community College. At the moment, she's not on the line. She might join us a little bit later on, so hopefully you'll get to hear from her. But next up, I want to quickly introduce Andrew Hill from St. Philip's College. Andrew, would you like to say hello?
Hello, greetings from San Antonio, Texas.
Good to have you. And then we also have Douglas Price from Tulsa Community College. Doug?
Good afternoon from Tulsa, Oklahoma.
And then last but certainly not least, we have Laura Foley from the University of Tulsa.
Hi, I'm Laura Foley, also in Tulsa, so excited to be here today.
Perfect. And if I am not mistaken, we have the lucky privilege to also have David Levin calling in. David, I think you can speak if you would like to say a quick hello and introduction.
Sarah, thanks very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. This is David Levin. I'm with the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs at the State Department. We're the overall sponsor for the Fulbright program, and delighted to be with all of you today talking about Fulbright Scholar-in-Residence.
Perfect. Thank you so much, David. Quickly diving in, as I said, I was going to do a quick overview of the program, and then I'm going to really pass the reins to Susan and our lovely panel of hosts, previous SIR host institutions, so they can really talk about their experience coming from both the community college background or a minority serving background, or in the case of St. Philip's, both. So we are so delighted to have them here to really share their experience with you. And then we'll close it out with some tools and resources and then an open Q&A. So I highly encourage you to think of questions throughout the session, chat them in. Natalie and myself will be answering them. This session is being recorded. We will put it online, and we will also provide the slide deck. But if you do have key questions for any of our hosts, again, I really encourage you to use this time to ask them those questions as you are working to craft your own application. So a quick overview of the program is the Fulbright program does work in partnership with 160 countries worldwide. In the effort and vein of what we're talking about today, it's an opportunity for you as U.S. institutions to bring a visiting scholar to your campus. The mission of the program is listed on this page as well. It's to foster mutual understandings between nations, advance knowledge across communities, and improve lives around the world. And as you look at the application, you will find that that is actually very integral to any application you ever design within Fulbright, to keep that at the forefront. The history of the program, David alluded to this a little bit, especially within funding, is it was established in 1946 by Congress. Fulbright still is the government's flagship international educational and cultural exchange program. And as David mentioned, it is sponsored by the U.S. Department of State with funding from the U.S. government, and then IIE has the privilege of administering this program on their behalf. So we're very delighted to be here today and working on such a fantastic program. Another thing that we always like to highlight is that diversity and inclusion is at the forefront of all of our programs. You can see the diversity and inclusion statement drafted by the Department of State on this screen. This very much is very central to everything we do. We want to ensure that the program reflects the diversity of the entire United States societies as well as societies abroad. So we want to make sure that that is very much woven into the fabric of this program. As I mentioned, I was going to do a very quick overview of the program because I really want the meat of this session to be focused on our distinguished panelists today. But as I mentioned, this program is institutionally driven. If we have anyone that is a visiting scholar or wishing to be a visiting scholar on the line, we welcome you today, but unfortunately, you are not the ones to apply. It's actually a U.S. institution that applies on your behalf. This allows you as U.S. institutions to be in the driver's seat to really craft an application that not only will benefit the visiting scholar, but holistically has benefits for your institution. It allows you to craft what discipline they're coming from, what country and region, and allows you to really craft a strategic application that really has both short and long-term impacts on your campus. You can bring any scholar or professional, and again, the original host or the primary host must be a U.S. accredited U.S. institution. And for these SIR grantees, they can do a variety of things, but really what is central to this program is that they are teaching in some capacity. This could be teaching courses or guest lecturing. They can help with your curriculum development, developing study abroad and exchange partnerships, as well as providing a cross-cultural or international perspective to your campus. We also hope that you will engage them outside of that primary host department across the wider campus community, as well as local communities. So think about partnering with K through 12 or local cultural organizations like Sister Cities or World Affairs Council. These scholars tend to be all-stars. We want to make sure that they are well known to faculty, staff, and students. We want them to be as visible as possible. And this is, again, just such a terrific opportunity for you to strategically utilize this Fulbright opportunity to ensure that your institution's needs are being met. You can host these scholars for a semester or full academic year. I believe Susan will go into this as well, but the minimum length is 3 months and the maximum is 10 months. So just keep that in mind. What we're currently recruiting for right now is fall of 2022 to spring of 2023 and in that academic year period. So we are obviously looking far in the future, but as anyone will know, having worked on this program, all that lead up time really is instrumental into having a successful program. With that, I will pass the reins over to Susan.
Thank you, Sarah. So much of what's here, Sarah has already explained. The program is open to all accredited U.S. institutions of higher education. We do not accept applications from individual scholars, though the foreign scholars serve as scholar-in-residence that apply through your institution. So your institution will apply, and the proposal really is driven by your institution's needs, with the scholar providing services and benefits to your institution. U.S. citizens and permanent residents are not eligible to fill that role, and non-U.S. institutions are not eligible to apply either. There is a maximum of 2 courses per semester for the scholar's teaching responsibilities, and to reiterate what Sarah had mentioned, the minimum length is 3 months for the grant and maximum of 10 months. So now we're going to hear from our alumni. We're very excited and privileged to have them on the session today to share their experiences and their tips for having a really successful experience. Unfortunately, I don't think that we'll be able to hear from Spokane Falls Community College, but they did host a scholar from Morocco from the 2018 to 19 academic year. We will hear from St. Philip's College from Andrew Hill, who hosted 2 scholars in residence from the United Kingdom, one in 2016 to 17 and one during the 2019-20 academic year. And we're also joined by Dr. Foley and Dr. Price from Tulsa Community College and University of Tulsa that submitted a joint proposal and worked collaboratively to host 2 different scholars, one from Hungary in 2016-17 and one from the United Kingdom in the 2019 to 20 academic year. So why don't we move forward to St. Philip's, and I would turn it over to Andrew.
All right, howdy from San Antonio. Again, my name is Andrew Hill, and I teach philosophy at St. Philip's College, which is a 2-year public community college. It's part of a larger district, the Alamo College District, that has 5 colleges. And our campus is a large one. We have 13,000 students, and it's been around since 1898. It started off as a private school for young girls, a historically Black college. But now, again, given our location in San Antonio, we're the HBCU that's the furthest west. And in San Antonio, a majority of our students now are Hispanic. So we're also a Hispanic serving institution. Can you get the next slide, please? Thanks. And it turns out that as part of our internationalization efforts, we decided we wanted to try to start a number of different initiatives across the district and on our individual campus. And on our campus, we thought it would be important to start with existing relationships. We wanted to talk about what can we build upon already. And I had spent a year in Northern Ireland in the United Kingdom at a peace center in Ballycastle, a small town. And I got to know a large number of the faculty there, the professional peace practitioners there. These were people that had worked for years in Northern Ireland doing peace workshops, given the history of conflict there. So it turns out when we wanted to reach out, I said, look, if through this program, the Scholar-in-Residence Program, the grant would come to us so we could have some control over this, and we could establish and build upon not just my experience there, but a relationship between what they're doing in Northern Ireland and our college. And the hope was, and this turned into a great reality, we started with a study abroad trip there and took our students to the Corrymeela Peace Center. And they were able to be taught by Richard and Yvonne Naylor, who you see at the top of this slide. And while we were there as a study abroad, we said, Richard and Yvonne, would you be interested in coming to St. Philip's as scholars in residence? And that was kind of the genesis and how we got started down the path with building a relationship with Corrymeela, the Peace Center, and with the scholars that worked there. And they came in the spring of 2016, and they gave guest lectures, they did workshops for faculty, and they also were really good about getting into the fabric of the city of San Antonio. They went to the San Antonio Peace Center. They also went to grade schools and other colleges, both within the Alamo College District, but also at St. Mary's University, Trinity, some of the private, 4-year universities in town. And so they were extraordinarily active in terms of reaching out to the larger community. And we had a wonderful experience. They had an incredible impact on our students and on student learning. And based upon that experience, which was 1 semester, so we started off with a shorter one because we wanted to see, the kind of the practical demands. We had to get the budget pulled together, which for our college was an issue. And so it was a positive, great experience. And when we stepped back from it the next year, we said, look, where does this fit in with our larger international education programs, our internationalization of the curriculum? And we decided we definitely wanted to do it again. We wanted to build on that relationship with the Corrymeela Peace Center. So we essentially went back to them and said, listen, this time we'd like to do it for a full year. And so we initially thought it would be in the 2018-2019 academic year, But again, this is one of the things about the program. We were given the award, but our scholar was sick. And it turns out that Derek Wilson, a professor from Ulster University and a volunteer at the Peace Center, said, look, I need some time. And Fulbright, to their credit, was very helpful and flexible. And they said, look, we'll just push back the start date. And so it ended up that Derek and Dot were able to come and join us for the 2019-2020 academic year. Again, because the folks in DC were so helpful and so flexible. But again, we wanted to both have our scholar be doing work inside and outside of the college, meaning inside the college with our students, but also with the other colleges in our district. And again, having kind of a larger impact. So could I get the next slide? You see the Derek there at the bottom of that one, talking with Kahala Creighton doing faculty development. But these pictures show Derek and his wife Dot really getting out into the community. The bottom left picture is with Ware and Neil Labat. They endow a lecture series at Schreiner University in Kerrville, about an hour and a half away from San Antonio. And then he was invited to go out there and give the lecture there and to talk to classes. And at first he came to me and he said, is this okay? And I said, no, we definitely want you to be doing this. Please entertain these invitations, get out, visit these other colleges. And that turned out to be one of from their point of view, one of the best things about their experience was that balance in terms of getting out. In fact, the upper left-hand picture, it turns out Derek and Dot became very active with the San Antonio Peace Center. Again, a relationship that had been forged by Richard and Yvonne Naylor, our original scholars back in 2016. But they picked up on that, and that picture is there with one of the founders of the San Antonio Peace Center, Arun Gandhi, who actually lived as a young boy with his grandfather, Mahatma Gandhi. So they established those ties kind of peace center to peace center. And that was also terribly rewarding. The upper right-hand corner is, that's Derek and I in Austin visiting with Claire McCarthy. That's her in the foreground. She's the Consul General of Ireland. She's there with the Vice Consul Paul Breen. And again, reaching out to diplomats and other organizations, not just, the Consul General, but like the World Affairs Council and other groups that are doing internationalization and international work in San Antonio was extraordinarily helpful. And that's the bottom picture there. That's us having dinner with Denise Garashi from Stanford University, who's an expert on that very thing, the internationalization of curriculum. She was in San Antonio for a presentation. Could you get our next slide, please? Thank you. And that was one of the things that Derek was really able to help us with, which was to rethink what does that look like on our campus in terms of what are our our global competence goals. And this work here has been designed and led by Alejandra Bueno. She's the executive director for international programs for the whole district, for the Alamo College district. And she's working with each of the 5 colleges to say, look, what does that look like beyond a study abroad, which we built on, beyond even the Fulbright Scholars-in-Residence? We've been using at St. Philip's the program from ACE, Internationalization in Action by Robin Helms. You might be familiar with that. It's a kind of an overall strategy for how to internationalize your whole campus and the entire college experience for your students. That, again, Derek was able to help us with. And could you get to our next slide there? This is the last thing that I want to end with, which was the partnerships are so important in terms of internally building up a team of people that can help you with the application, but also with the impact. The support while they're here is obviously very important, and there's a lot of logistics that go into it. But in terms of a long-term impact, you want to have forged partnerships within your college or university and then with the community. And one area I would highly recommend you in terms of seeking out local support is there already in place a Fulbright Association chapter. And if so, connect with them, serve on the board, get involved with their activities. A lot of places have active chapters, and I highly recommend that. It was one of the best experiences that we had during the course of the year, because the local chapter was very active and very supportive of Derek and Dot. And again, what you'll find over and over is that it's just going to be about the partnerships that you forge on campus and off, before, during, and after the experience. So that's what we did at St. Philip's College. And at this point, I'll turn it back over, I think, next to Tulsa Community College. Is that right? There we go.
Yes, thanks so much, Andrew.
My pleasure.
Over to Doug and Laura.
Doug, do you want to start?
Well, I was kind of thinking, I was about to message you. I think maybe if you're going to talk about kind of the founding of our partnership, maybe if you want to jump in first, or we could go back and forth, or whatever would work.
Great. Can we go to the next slide? These are just a couple pictures of two of our scholars. We've actually had three. In between these two, we had a scholar from France. I don't remember exactly what year that was, but if we'll go to the next slide. So here in the presentation before us, the leveraging of partnerships was certainly key from the very beginning for the partnership between the University of Tulsa and the University and Tulsa Community College. If I recall from years ago, my boss at the time brought this opportunity to me, and she had known Doug through a community organization called Tulsa Global Alliance, which is the organization that runs our sister cities programs and some other international visitor programs. And so they had hosted, Tulsa Global Alliance and the University of Tulsa had hosted a Fulbright enrichment seminar, which was amazing. Fulbright scholars from all over the U.S. came for a couple of days and met together and focused on a particular topic. So when my former boss showed me this opportunity and introduced me to Doug, it all kind of came together. It made a lot of sense to join forces. At the time, my university, the University of Tulsa, had some resources to put towards this. We were able to offer housing, gym memberships, travel expenses to go to conferences for the scholar. And I was running a Global Scholars Program. And my Global Scholars Program had an annual theme. The first year we worked on this, our theme was food. And so we started with that theme to try to just figure out who we wanted to come visit us. So one challenge we had is we didn't really care about where that person came from, but we had to pick a place. And we just knew it could be anyone who could teach about kind of global food systems or food. It didn't even have to be systems. It could have been, it was very, very open. So I think we ended up specifying a social scientist who could talk about food. And I think that what I'll say, one thing I'll say about having a theme is that helped us write our proposal, to write a really strong proposal, because we were able to we were able to pull in the community partnerships based around the theme. The courses that were taught were around the theme. And so having that theme worked out really well. One thing that I'll mention, and this will kind of lead into Doug talking about our lessons learned of identifying your own scholar. Our first go at this, Fulbright chose our scholar, and they chose a lovely scholar. However, we, instead of being cautious, like like St. Philip's did, we went for a full year with an unknown entity. And our scholar was fabulous. He also reached out all over the state. I sometimes call him in Hungary to find out, hey, who can I connect with in, the field of bee pollination? Like everything about agriculture, he connected with everyone in the state. But he was also a 70-year-old Hungarian man who had certain expectations. And so he ended up being a lot of work on the part of my staff. He needed a lot of help, not with his work, but he wanted, a ride to get a haircut, and he wanted someone to iron his clothes. We helped him find someone to pay to do that. And so that kind of led us into what Doug will talk about identifying a known scholar to work with. So our time and effort, depending on who the scholar is, can be pretty heavy. In the future, our second two were very highly independent and took a lot less time and effort on the part of our staffs. In terms of administrative support from our universities, I don't think either of us had any issue at all, because there's very little that needs to be put out there from an institutional perspective. Fulbright pays for pretty much everything. And what I'll say about ongoing relationships, Doug has a lot more to say about this, but for our first two scholars, our agricultural economists from Hungary and our political scientists from France, we have, at TU, we've continued relations with both of those folks. And my current office houses our nationally competitive scholarships program. And so we've been able to really draw on those folks. We haven't had a winner yet, but we've had finalists for student applicants in both Fulbright applications in Hungary and in France, specifically connecting to those scholars. So that's my kind of nutshell explanation. And Doug, do you want to carry on?
I'd be happy to. Hold on just a minute, make sure I'm not muted. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the University of Tulsa for their support. They're a tremendous asset to partner with. As a community college, we don't always have maybe the capacity to kind of go full steam ahead on bringing a Fulbright. Perhaps we could do it now on our own, but at that time it was fantastic for them to reach out to us, and it was a great partnership. So thank you to University of Tulsa for that. The thing that's been interesting to me as I was reflecting as Laura was speaking was that the University of Tulsa was the lead institution on the first two scholars. And then so on the third scholar, TCC jumped in and became the lead institution, which gave a bit of a break to the University of Tulsa for that. So we kind of shared the wealth on who would be leading the process and submitting the application and all of that. So to tie into what Laura had said, identifying a scholar first, I think, is a critical component. And I would say, since we've done it both ways, I would recommend for those listening and considering this, if you could identify the scholar first, do it by a theme, which Laura mentioned, but then talk to your faculty and others at the institution of what might be for the greater good for your institution to have someone represent a particular world area, a particular discipline, et cetera. And then through connections, which now that we have Zoom, it seems like it's a little bit easier to make connections these days, people are more accessible. And to identify that scholar and you get to know them. For Dr. Kendra Reynolds, our scholar from the UK or Northern Ireland, we had two faculty in the English departments, one at TCC, one at TU, who had done a lot of travels to Northern Ireland and had contacts there. And through those connections, we kind of casted a vision to develop more of a partnership with Northern Ireland. And so we then could leverage the Fulbright Scholar to help us to achieve that. And so with that, when you go to identify a scholar, I would throw out a piece of advice of having some bench depth, to make sure that you don't have just one scholar in mind and he or she is the only choice that you have. We had a set of unfortunate circumstances with our first scholar that was approved. We were moving forward. And then in March, I got this note from Northern Ireland that he had to withdraw. There was no explanation, which I know now what had happened, and it wasn't good news for a friend of his, but we had to go then to another individual. And so I would contact with our faculty here at TCC and TU and said, who else could we reach out to? And then we followed up with that, got approval to change scholars. Fulbright was very understanding of our predicament and encouraged us to continue. So at that point in March and April, we were kind of under the gun to really kind of move forward quickly and to go through this process again. So, and then we decided to have the scholar here for a full year versus just one semester, which the initial scholar was going to be here. So anyway, identifying that scholar first really helps align everything. It makes it so much easier to write the proposal. You know where you want to go with it. It just makes it a little bit easier. And again, we've done it both ways. I would recommend getting the scholar first. The next two items, maybe I'll kind of take in tandem, but it's international programming opportunities that kind of emerged from, and I'm going to focus on Kendra Reynolds and our Northern Ireland contact, if I may, then also faculty development opportunities. They kind of went hand in hand, but emanating from having Kendra here, we've actually developed a lot of additional programming options or opportunities from that. For example, we have a partnership now between Tulsa Community College, LaGuardia Community College in Queens, New York, and Ulster University. And we are writing across the themes of traumatic issues across time and how those play out in poetry, for example. So we were looking at poetry that focused on the Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921, and then the Troubles, Northern Ireland, and then the current pandemic, and the Queens, New York being the epicenter of the pandemic. So we were looking across time, basically 100 years, and various events, and then looked at the poetry written from those areas. So this is something that emerged after the scholar was here. And so, as I think Andrew and Laura have also indicated, there's so much that can come out of these partnerships. It's not just a one-off opportunity. There's so much that can come out of it. And then we're also look forward to having Kendra probably serve as a guest lecturer at our institution. I haven't talked to Laura about this yet, but a guest lecturer at TCC and perhaps at TU as well. The faculty development opportunities, I'll kind of pivot to that real quick. Writing the proposal was a development opportunity in of itself. To sit with two English faculty members to write that proposal was phenomenal for me in terms of my professional development, but for them as well to engage in writing that proposal was just incredible, especially the first one that we did when we brought our faculty member from Hungary. It was just a tremendous opportunity. And with Kendra, while she was here, she and I would visit several classrooms in a variety of curriculum areas, from developmental studies to, of course, composition to even like anatomy and physiology. And we really wove the notion of poetry in and out of all those curricular areas. And so each faculty member we worked with were left with a set of tools they could use for future semesters, and with which I could follow up as well after Kendra went back home to Northern Ireland. So again, lots of opportunities that, and with Zoom now playing such a big role, we could follow up with those opportunities much more quickly. Real quick is kind of maybe to tie this all together in terms of the benefits of having a SIR here, Scholar in Residence, is sometimes the secondary benefits or tertiary benefits. It's not just having the scholar here, it's what it means afterwards, which I've mentioned already several times. But I was talking to Kendra just the other day, and Laura, I've not told you this, but she had mentioned that 3 of her students in her honors English composition class, which she taught a year ago here at TCC, and then finished online when she went back to Northern Ireland due to the pandemic, 3 of her students emailed Kendra back in Northern Ireland and asked her to write a recommendation letter for scholarships. And I believe 2 of the 3 students earned a scholarship. We don't know whether it was due to Kendra's letter or not, but the fact that students here who were reached out to by the SIR, now back in Ireland, Northern Ireland, are being asked to write letters to help our students at a community college advance to the next institution. I think that's a very moving and nice touch that a lot of people may not be aware of, just the impact of doing or having a SIR here at the institutions can have after it's all said and done. I'm going to mention one last thing and I'll be quiet. But one of the things that Laura and I have done in the past is also to leverage the Fulbright Outreach Lecture Fund, which is it's for another program another day, but it's a really neat opportunity to bring in a scholar that's already in the United States, obviously from another world area, to lecture on campus. And the nice thing about that is since we have this great capacity for partnerships between the University of Tulsa and Tulsa Community College, we can leverage that partnership and then bring in a scholar from somewhere in the United States to talk about a particular topic that would find residents at TU as well as TCC. So lots of opportunities. If anyone hasn't been convinced already that they should be applying for this, you need to do it. If you have a local university from the community college, if you have a local university you can partner with, it's great for capacity building and for future, other types of partnerships that you can engage in. And we don't have time, but Laura and I are also working on a project for this summer, nothing to do with Fulbright directly, but because of the partnership we developed, we don't have to worry about meeting. I mean, we just say, hey, would you like to do this? We know how to work together, and it really pays off dividends. So there's so much that comes out of the Fulbright SIR program. So I can't talk about it enough, which is obvious. So I'll hand it over to our next presenter.
Great. Thank you so much to both of you. I'd like to open it up to all 3 of you for discussion. And what I'd like to start out with first is how did you enlist support from your institution's leadership in the process of applying for this award?
I'm happy to respond to that in that for us, there was this dynamic between the college and the district, because in our experience, the way it's set up in San Antonio is that the district would handle study abroad programs. And so they were essentially an effort by all 5 of the colleges together. And they were encouraging the colleges to put programs together, proposals together. And so when I was trying to build support on my own campus at St. Philip's College, I had this kind of advantage of saying, listen, the district is really encouraging this. They would like us to try to do this. And so that was actually kind of helpful at the beginning, but it was important for me to do it kind of just step by step. Start with the chair, go to the dean, you work your way up to the vice president and build support that way, just one by one conversations.
In the case of the University of Tulsa, it was our campus leadership who brought the opportunity to me. We were at the height of our internationalization efforts at the time, and so it made a lot of sense. So I didn't have to do much, except for, and this is kind of falls into tips for applicants, in getting all the letters of support. I basically drafted the letters for the people so they had less work to do, and it was hard for them to say no.
Great. That leads me sort of into the next question of how you enlisted the support from your local community.
Well, I would say this, which is we had our plan was to kind of build up slowly from a study abroad to a 1 semester to a full year scholar in residence. And I knew I wanted to do it with the Peace Center, where I already had a personal experience. But what was amazing to me was that once I started talking about this idea, people would say to me, oh, you know, somebody at this other college has a connection, or somebody at the Red Cross has this connection. And I didn't realize that there was already in place in San Antonio a group of people that had gone to the Peace Center as far back as the 70s or 80s or 90s. And so there were these existing relationships. And that kind of also helped build on itself. It helped us build a team of advisors for our application to the Fulbright Scholar-in-Residence Program. And so, again, that kind of just grew organically around the theme, peace studies in the center. But I would recommend that in terms of off-campus, look at who are the people that are working in the area, what existing organizations. For example, when we were trying to focus on not just internationalization, but specifically on peace and conflict studies, it was helpful for us to get support from every place from the Rotary Club and their Peace Fellows to the American Red Cross. So there was a lot of overlap between community organizations, and again, a lot of referrals from people that are active in the area.
Yeah, I would chime in on behalf of TCC and TU, and Laura, feel free to join in as well. I think it was just a force multiplier by the partnership that we had with the community college and university, because the people working together on the proposal knew a lot of folks. I mean, highly networked. So it really was pretty much just reaching out to those we already know, asking for letters of support. And so it really wasn't a heavy lift in our case, which we're very fortunate to have. So Laura, do you want to add more to that, or?
Yeah, just to say that we're fortunate to live in a city that is a very it's a mid-sized city, but it's almost like a small town, and so it's very easy to do community engaged work where we are, and we took advantage of that.
Great, and I like, that's a good tip, a little strategy to draft the letters for them and then have them sign them. That's, I like that tip. In terms of the community engagement and the level of activities, how much would you say was planned in advance, and how much was spontaneous or determined after the scholars' arrival on campus?
I'm glad you asked that question, because that is the best practical tip I could give anybody applying for the first time, which is that at the beginning of the schedule, whether it's for a semester or a year, you want to leave it kind of open, because what happens is, and we learned this with Richard and Yvonne, at the beginning, we had it kind of open. And they said, oh, we don't feel like we're working hard enough. We don't feel like we're doing enough. And I said, oh, have patience, because what happened was, as soon as they began to do presentations, as soon as they began to get out in the community, they were so wonderful, they were so great in their impact, that they immediately were approached by people with more and more invitations. And so that snowball built up pretty fast, because the more they did, the more people loved them, the more invitations they got. And so suddenly, by even just a few weeks in, their schedule was completely full. And so you do want at the beginning, and we applied this later with Derek and Dot, you want to leave some flexibility, especially early on, because that also gives them the ability to kind of shape what direction and what they want to focus on in terms of not just research and writing, but also building those relationships. So again, think open at the beginning, because trust me, it'll fill in.
I'll echo what Andrew was saying, because Kendra Reynolds is a published poet. And one of the things that we would hope she could do is to meet Joy Harjo, He's from Oklahoma and our current United States Poet Laureate. And it so happens that a colleague of mine that lives over by the TU campus said, hey, Joy Harjo is going to be at an institution about an hour or so east of us, Tulsa here. And would you like to go? And I'm like, yes. And I will bring our Fulbright scholar who's a poet. Long story short, it was a great time of collaboration and talking on the trip over and on the way back. But then she got to meet at a reception our poet laureate in the United States. It was just fantastic. That was something, it wasn't a strategic plan, but you do have to be adaptable and flexible and kind of go with the flow. So things will come up when the scholars here that you can take advantage of that no one ever anticipated. And I think that's the beauty of the program.
Great. Okay. What have been your personal and professional takeaways from the experience? I'd say, let's say top one or two.
For me, I have some new friends. That's part of it. In working with our first scholar from Hungary, Hungary has a very strong Fulbright program. And so I've been able to, I was kind of tuned in to one of their programs where I went over to Hungary for a week or so and got to visit all the institutions there and learn more about their Fulbright program. So that was a professionally great opportunity. And yeah, I mean, if I or anyone on this call wants to go to Hungary, István will take you hunting and put you up in his mountain cabin. He's very, very open and welcoming to everyone. And you can taste some great wine too.
When Kendra got back to Northern Ireland, I was really interested to expand our partnership with Ulster University. And so I asked her if she knew anyone in the theater program. And she introduced me to their dean. And at that point, it was about a year ago, almost to the date, started partnering with the theater program in Ulster University with our program here at TCC. And literally, we just ended that collaboration, which has been a year now, that came out of Kendra's being here. And so she made those connections for me. But the neat thing about that is that professionally, our theater program coordinator as well it was a great faculty development opportunity for him to interact with theater folks over in Northern Ireland. And then for our students to work together for 2 semesters was just phenomenal. The first semester they wrote scripts together. And then the second semester they decided to write a play together. And so for several weeks at 4 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon, we would get together on Zoom with our newfound friends in Northern Ireland and read through the play that 2 of the students had written. And I am not a playwright, but I got to roll up my sleeves and actually got to help critique a play. And that was, for me personally and professionally, that was a neat thing to do. I've never done that before. So to kind of be engaged with the students was fantastic. So again, as I mentioned 1,000 times, there's a lot of secondary and tertiary benefits that come out of these partnerships that you would have never dreamed of. So kudos to this program.
Yeah, I would follow up on that comment in that one of the best things that comes out of this particular type of program is not the thing you plan on, because it's a lot like, just international travel. You have to have the right attitude because some things are going to go wrong. But again, it can be a very rewarding experience. And for me, the key here is that it's the opportunity that you don't see, the connections that come down the road 2, 3, 5 years later that you didn't envision at the beginning. And that's, again, a reflection of the relationships that get built, the experiences people have. And so it turns out that I think that the unknown factor is an important one, but also in terms of just professionally rewarding, I can tell you it's just direct impact on students and student learning. I saw that over and over with Richard and Yvonne. I saw it over and over with Derek and Dot. And again, perhaps this underscores the point our friends in Oklahoma were making about how crucial it is to have the selection of the scholar in residence, because that it does make a big difference. And what happened in this case was they were intelligent, but also bright and energetic and engaging, and they transformed student experience. So for me personally, professionally, that was the most rewarding aspect.
That's great. Okay, we have a couple of questions that have come in from our attendees that are specific to the panelists. I'm hoping that you can answer these. More logistical. So for the community colleges, regarding teaching a credit course, did you have the scholar teach a credit course? If so, were there any issues or suggestions about setting that up in terms of school requirements or processes?
Yes, that's a great question. Number one, if you're going to have a scholar in residence come here, you might want to talk to your human resources department, just so they know what's coming, since the scholar does not get paid, but they still have to be put into the system and have access to everything. That's just something that was just one of those hiccups that we didn't anticipate. Of course, they have to get their ID, but just that upfront conversation, I'd be more than happy to talk offline with anyone on that if they want to know kind of what we did here at TCC. But once we did that one time, it was easy than the second time. So in terms of teaching the course, the first two scholars, I think one co-taught a course, so that wasn't as hard to pull off. But then Kendra had her own section to teach. So once she was kind of through the human resources hurdle, we just put her on the schedule as we would any adjunct faculty member. And we obviously didn't have the payroll for her, but other than that, everything was identical. We got her an office space, and we had to get her keys for that, which isn't a big deal. They have to explain to someone that there's going to be someone from other world area having an office space on your campus. The thing for us was that we really had to introduce all of these things to a lot of folks, so that we're going to be bringing someone else in. So it really kind of opened up how we see what we do, but fairly seamless on having this person be signed up to teach a course. So hopefully that addressed your question.
I'll add as just kind of a tip, with at least our first scholar, maybe the second, we did find it challenging. They were such kind of experts in their area. We found it a little bit challenging in the first two cases to find a course that matched the community college curriculum.
Good point.
And they ended up teaching a course at the University of Tulsa and either co-teaching or doing an extensive amount of guest lecturing at Tulsa Community College.
One of the things that we had that's actually a benefit is that the individuals helping with the proposal were both English faculty at the institution, so they knew her quite well and her credentials. So in terms of buy-in by other faculty and this person teaching, there was no issues at all.
You know, I would also add the point about the trade-off between guest lecturing and actually being the instructor of record for a course. In our experience, we decided not to do that only because we wanted to provide the scholar in residence with enough flexibility to be involved in the community. And so we were trying to have them be in the classroom teaching, which they did regularly. And it was, like I was saying earlier, very much appreciated by the students. It had a big impact. But we wanted to stay away from the burdens of teaching and keep that off their plate. And so it was that in our experience, that was probably the best thing to do. It gave them an opportunity to spend more time in the community, but also, like Douglas had mentioned, he mentioned the Outreach Lecture Fund, the OLF. Our scholar, Derek Wilson, was able to go and spend a week in Alabama guest lecturing there and not have to worry about, the trade-off of being away for a week if he was teaching, if he was an instructor of record for a course. So that flexibility and freedom, I think, was valuable. And for us, it was the right call.
And Andrew, I'm glad you said that real quick, because Kendra was going to go to Gutman Community College in New York to do a presentation, and I believe that was already approved. And then the pandemic took her back to Northern Ireland. And but a year later, we were able to do that via Zoom. So again, a nice offshoot of that program. So we didn't want to give up on that. So plus my connection with Gutman was more strong because we kept in touch throughout the year in anticipation of having Kendra then present a year later. So again, lots come out of this program. It's great.
That's great.
Douglas, I know you'll also appreciate this brief story, which is that when we prepared an office for Richard and Yvonne, I had gone by and put their picture up with a little thing about the Fulbright Scholar-in-Residence outside their door so that when they arrived, it would be all ready for them. And I put up a British Union Jack flag because they were coming from the United Kingdom. Well, another faculty member saw it and took it down and then gave it to me and said, "Oh my God, somebody put this on their door." And I took it down because I know they're Irish and I didn't want them to be insulted. And I thought, oh, this is brilliant. I said, well, that's exactly why they're coming here to talk to us about their history and heritage and to explain why this is a funny story. It went well.
That's great. Okay. We are coming up on the top of the hour, and we have just a few more items to get through. I'm going to turn it back over now to Sarah, who's going to walk us through some of the resources we have available in support of the application, which is due October 15th, 2021.
Great. Thanks so much, Susan. And if anyone has questions, please shut them in. We can probably stay on for a few extra minutes addressing those. But the application is now open. If any of you had completed that interest survey, that is great. That's a great starting point to really start the conversation with us. But now, in addition to the advising sessions we're having, we're really transitioning into getting you into the application. It will have a deadline of October 15th. Obviously, you will not be alone. We will have some upcoming webinars that I'll highlight, and you can ask us any questions. You can see the content listed on this screen. A lot of this coincides with what our wonderful panelists discussed today, so it shouldn't be a surprise to you all. And we do have great resources listed that really walk you through each one of these components. The timeline is listed here in the early spring. That's where you express interest. We then are shifting to webinars, which you're a part of right now. And then we will be shifting again after our webinars complete to having office hours. I believe it's once a week as of right now. Take a look on our website. We'd encourage you to sign up for as many as you would like, but they're open formats where you can talk to me, hear about other institutions and their questions. But overall, in that time frame, that's really when you're supposed to be working on your proposal and applications. And again, keep in mind that they are due no later than October 15th of 21. And again, that is for the 2022 to 2023 cycle. As I mentioned on a few other slides, we have great resources online, including our office hours and advising sessions. Our application guidelines will walk you through all of those components, but please utilize our website. 9 times out of 10, if you have a question, it will be addressed in the FAQs. But if you feel like emailing us with any nuanced questions or just trying to seek further clarification, myself and my colleague Natalie are both in that inbox, happy to speak with each of you and really address any concerns that you might have. I did mention previously that we have one more webinar for this cycle. It will take place on June 15th. It is our application walkthrough where Susan and I will actually go into a live application and show you each component and really go through those application requirements. So again, we encourage you to tune in for that. And with that, I believe that's everything that I have to throw your way. Our email is on the screen, sar@iie.org. I'm not sure. I'm checking to make sure no other questions have come in. It doesn't look like it. But I just thank you all for taking this time. Again, if anyone wants to type in some more questions or you can email us, Before I pass it back to Susan, David, I believe you're still on the call. Is there anything that you would like to address to the panel?
Sarah, this is David. I would just like to thank our alumni hosts that did a great job and really help sort of get the message across of how exciting SIR is and the benefits from it professionally, how it helps your community become globally engaged. Did a great example, and Sarah, thanks to you and to Susan as well.
Perfect. Thanks so much, David. One other question did come in, and it was, will you send us the presentation? Yes, we will archive the recording and the slide deck. They'll be listed online, typically in 4 to 5 business days, but I will follow up with all attendees, providing them the content. But I, in addition to David, want to thank our panelists. And with that, I will pass it to Susan to close us out.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, David, for your continued support for the program and sponsorship. Thank you, Andrew, Laura, and Douglas. We really appreciated hearing, first of all, your enthusiasm for the program and your real great nuggets and tips for prospective applicants. Thank you, and thank you for tuning in to our attendees, and good luck with the application.
Thanks very much.